thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, and thank you to the authors of the report and the stakeholders who helped them craft these very, very important reports. What I thought I would try to do is give you a very short outline of the attitude of the Carnegie UK Trust to this area, why we are involved, and what we hope, what learning we hope we can take from the work that the Wheel has been doing. And it has, as Deirdre has been saying, a fantastic relationship with the Wheel. We are, of course, members of the Wheel. We operate in Ireland, have done since 1913, regulated by the Irish Charity Authority, but based in Scotland and funded originally with an endowment from Andrew Carnegie, who at the time was the richest man in the world. If you want to know how rich, in modern day money, he had 273 billion pounds. Regrettably, it's not all in my or our bank account, but he was immensely wealthy. There were 22 Carnegie Associations, foundations he set up, most of them in America, 3 based in Scotland, and ours is the only one covering Ireland and the United Kingdom. If you know us at all, and there's no reason why you should do, you know us through the Carnegie libraries around the world, which we funded the Irish and the UK ones. So I'm going to give you a very brief outline of 3 areas. Bear with me. Philosophy, Ivan will like this one. History, maybe not, and a future focus. So firstly, philosophy. Alex de Tocqueville was writing in the 19th century, French, looking at the emerging democracy of the time, the United States. And he made a still very, very important connection between free association and democracy. He was saying democracy is not just about the government you elect. Democracy is equally, he didn't say higher than or lower than, equally about the ability of citizens to freely associate. And that's what these reports are about. It's about civil society, the ability of people within civil society to come together at their choosing on the issues that they wanted to do, which may or may not be important to you or their neighbors, but to be allowed to do that because that's the nature of a democracy. So what he was saying, there are 2 elements to a democracy, free association and government. And in some ways, we have lost that parity of esteem. We now think of democracies as the process by which you elect government, which is incredibly important, but we have not kept up with this idea of free association. And if you think about it, a democracy can be, as people have said, a tyranny of the majority. Free association allows people to express themselves, to be interested in things they are, without the interference of government, unless there are reasons for that interference. And that is a constant debate between society and governments, between civil society and government. So that philosophy is behind what we are trying to do. And let me just be clear, we're not saying civil society trumps government by any means, but neither are we saying government trumps civil society. And that tension is being played out today in Ireland. It will be played out over the next century, and I'll come to that later. The second is history. The history of the 20th century, particularly in Europe, has been a century of growing social protection for all of us as citizens. Our governments, when over a period of time overlapping from 19th to 20th century, our governments were opened up to democratic vote. More men were allowed to vote in the 19th century, women allowed to vote in the 20th century. We're still having that debate. In Scotland, you can vote at 16 in certain elections. You can't in other parts of the United Kingdom. So we are still working out how far we should extend our democratic. But the important thing about the 20th century, most of us in this room, I think all of us in this room, have benefited from the extended social protections. My mother and father were the first in our generation to own, our family, to own their own home. My brothers and I were the first in our family to go to university. Our life expectancy over my grandparents is almost 22 years. Over your grandparents, some of you much younger than I, it's getting on for nearly 25, 30 years. We have all benefited from government-led social protection. We've also benefited from a whole range of democratic expansions within Europe. Over my lifetime, there were 3 military dictatorships in Western Europe alone. Greece, Portugal, and Spain, they have gone. Of course, that century was a century of utter devastation of wars. But broadly, history has been on the side of government. And that is also very important to recognize. The social protections they have given us through tax raising and redistribution has been clear. And now the present and the future. The present and the future is where we are increasing inequality. That issue, that great drive through the 20th century to raise GDP, to raise the general wealth and distribute it to us all in terms of health, education, social services, is now at a point where many of us have benefited and will continue to benefit from it, but a substantial minority aren't, and now getting further and further from the mean. Now, inequality, and this is important, has always been in my line and the trust line, a moral issue, but it's also now increasingly clear as an economic issue. The OECD, the club of the richest 34 nations in the world, has absolutely pinpointed inequality as doing damage to every society in which it exists. That's economic damage. Societies which are more unequal are also poorer in the sense that we are all poorer living in unequal societies. We are all poorer because the economy doesn't do so well, opportunities are not made, social mobility is not there. So this is an important strand of our current thinking, that inequality remains a moral issue, but the power of change is about its economic impact on all of us. If it's dragging our economies down, we have a self-interest in reducing inequality as well as a moral duty. So that's where we stand on our history, our philosophy, and our hope for the future. And it comes back to civil society. Civil society needn't have anything to do with some of the issues that maybe we'll be discussing today. It can be the bowling club, it can be the trade body. But they exist as part of a larger group of freedom of association. And the freedom of association we have to assert more clearly and with greater confidence, not to say, please give it to us, but it is, as a right, a fundamental issue, a fundamental feature of a democratic society. You can't have a democratic society without free association and civil society. So we're hoping the future will be beyond GDP, beyond growing wealth. It will be about our well-being. We're hoping that the issues of inequality, agency, which is very important. Agency is about the power of individuals to affect their own lives, and freedom, the freedom to associate. All these things are captured in these wonderful three documents. They're all part of the conversation today, and many more things which I haven't mentioned. So my final thanks are to the Wheel, fantastic partners working with you. They have great range through their membership, which is you, which is absolutely critical to this kind of issue. To the authors of these three reports, I know how hard you've had to work, and all the stakeholders too, who have engaged and enriched the process and resulted in what I think are three absolutely fascinating reports. And I hope you enjoy reading them and debating them this morning. Thank you.